That's right, folks. It's your man D Weezy here coming to you live at Backyard Action Media with the Bookie Beatdown tonight. Here we're gonna be looking over some of the biggest blowouts, busts, some of the hottest trends and streaks going on. Keep you up to date and informed that way to make yourself a better, and hopefully keep a little more money in your pocket as that bankroll keeps growing as we hope to find you some winners along the way. Now, as we get into things tonight, first up, we're going to recap what we have in Thursday night football as the Bills and the Packers found themselves facing off in Green Bay. And I think a lot of people had some speculation and uncertainty into what the quarterback position would be for the Tennessee Titans coming into this game. And honestly, I think it was called for a bit. A lot of people were liking what they were seeing out of Malik Willis, even though it was limited. Um, I do think he's a bit of a rough project. Um, and ultimately, I do believe that's why that in this game we saw Tannehill start coming back from the injury, being healthy. Um, I definitely think that the health is the reason we didn't see Tannehill start in the previous weeks. We saw even when Willis was starting, it was in a very limited capacity in the passing game. He's shown streaks and flashes here and there, but ultimately, I believe it was his mobility that helped him along the way. Now, I do not believe that anybody expected Tannehill to come out in this game and not only outduel Aaron Rodgers, but also go over 300 yards in this game, passing for a total of 333 yards with two TDs. He did have an interception on the night, which isn't uncalled for. I mean, for the most part, I think this is a stat line that we expect from the Tennessee Titans in this game, who found themselves coming in as the underdog minus 3 points. I do believe that if it was announced more not as close to game time that Tannehill would be the starter, we would have possibly seen Tennessee be the favorite in this game. And that being said, I do believe it was a chance for a lot of bettors out there to find ways to take angles and plays on this game. Me personally, I had a teaser parlay where I was able to get the Tennessee Titans at +9 and the game total under 47. This was able to cash tonight as we see the final score did come in at a total of 44 with 27-17. Now, in this game, I do believe a lot of people expected the Packers to try and rush the ball more, move the ball more on the ground as they have done in the past couple of weeks. And unfortunately, that was not the case. We saw Aaron Rodgers go out here and throw the ball for nearly 40 times, 227 yards. He did have two touchdowns on the night. Both, I believe, went to the rookie Christian Watson, who has shown out in the past couple of games, having five TDs in the past 2 weeks. Ultimately, things were not able to work out for the Packers. We did see Aaron Jones have 40 yards on 12 carries, which is somewhat in line with what we've seen out of the Packers in the past. It appeared that Jones was having a successful day when he was getting the ball in the run game, and they just seemed to not prefer to go that route. They wanted to go to the run, go to Aaron Rodgers in the pass game, and ultimately it didn't work out as we see. Aaron Rodgers 24 for 39, slightly over 50% pass completion. You know, not an not a stellar day out of Aaron Rodgers, but as I said, Aaron Jones having 12 carries for 40 yards, it left many people wondering why aren't they running the ball more with this man. Now, me, this is what I expected out of the out of the Packers, as I had Aaron Jones under on his rushing prop for the night, which I believe was 56.5. He came well under that number. And so, me personally, I was able to put a few dollars in my pocket off the game tonight. Hopefully, a few others out there were able to do the same. Having that up to date information, especially on things like injuries or who might be returning from injury, is definitely information that can be extremely valuable. Want to give a shout out to my man, OTR Mike, at the Open Mic podcast. Folks, this is the man with the info, with the storylines and the pulse of what is going on. So definitely make sure to swing over and check out what he's got going on. If you happen to know me from the LBHT community, you know there are a number of podcasters that we all interact with and work together with. This is just one of them. And, so shout out, Mike. Now to move on to our next topic, going back to Monday night, where we had the Eagles taking on the Commanders in DC, the previously undefeated Eagles going up against a team that many felt they should beat. Um, it is definitely a it was definitely a game that many were not expecting. We saw turnovers and what many thought a late penalty that ended up affecting the game greatly, where the tight end for the Eagles, Goddard, was taken down, and it was a clear, blatant face mask. Wasn't called. It was apparently so blatant that Goddard found his way to the injury list, and still, folks are waiting on that laundry to come out. Now, in this game, we saw turnovers affect the game greatly, as the Eagles had a number of turnovers and were struggling throughout the game to hold on to the ball. Um, I do think in a lot of ways this was a good game for the Eagles to get out of their system. You know, starting the season 9-0. I do believe that the Eagles are a team that can make a deep, if not Super Bowl run in the playoffs. And being able to get that first loss out of their system. Yes, it was a divisional foe, which I do believe played a part in this game, as we have two NFC opponents taking each other on, which in games like this, you can throw out things like the spread. You can throw out who's the underdog, because ultimately it can come down to simply who wants it more. And in this game, it was the Commanders that were able to come out on top with an 11-point victory in a game where I do believe going into things they were, yes, an 11-point underdog. As I said, folks, with a divisional game, you can definitely throw the spread window, because there's just no telling what might take place. That's just the simple fact of things, and there's no way around that. Looking into this game, we see, man, if t- t- if Heineke and Rivera, maybe it's just me being a Panthers fan, but this it's almost like, I don't want to say a bad joke, but these two seem to find ways to win in spite of people. And honestly, that seems what occurred Monday night, as we see the Commanders. eh, Heineke, he had an interception on the night, which I don't think shocks too many people. They did give up a few sacks, but overall, 17 for 29, 211 yards. We do see that the Commanders were able to move the ball in the rushing game as Brian Robertson, who, I mean, let's be honest, folks, this has to be the comeback player of the year. You get shot during the season multiple times, and you only miss a couple weeks, and now you back on the field, moving the rock, moving people. Like this is one person you can't say this man doesn't have heart and doesn't love the game of football. That because you don't get shot and say, yeah, I'm ready to run back out on this football field ASAP. And so, me personally, it's definitely a nice, good story to see. A player who had a lot of potential when he was drafted to the team was hit with a random occurrence that didn't stop him, and we see him still on Sundays moving the rock, taking on defenses, and finding the end zone. What up, my man? As y'all heard me say, another member of the LBHT community, you know, love the respect. Yeah, if you just tuning in, this is the Bookie Beatdown tonight. Possibly something that could be happening more often. I'm still working on trying to set down a night, potentially Thursday, or well, technically Friday, 12 a.m. Um, Possibly Tuesday, it technically that Wednesday, 12 a.m. But yes, those of y'all that know me, I'm a night owl, and sometimes that's what it takes to be in these lines and to be up to date on this information. And somebody's got to put the work in. So if I got to put the work in for you, I'm glad to do it, folks. Those that know me, they'll tell you I'm the wrong one to send on a rabbit hole looking for some stats and research. We're not going to talk about the height of people back in the 60s and 70s, and we're not going to talk about certain defensive ends and who is and isn't. And yeah. So, all right. But yes, as I was saying with the Eagles, you know, coming into this game, this team was hot. This team, I expect to stay hot. I think this is a loss that will help them more than it will hurt them. I don't think that it will lead to any sort of tiebreaker issue down the line. Um, I do think that, as I said, the Eagles have it, or well, I expect them to make the playoffs, but they are putting themselves in position to have the deep playoff run and potentially Super Bowl appearance. I won't go as far to say I think they may win it, but I would not be shocked to see them playing in February in the Super Bowl. And I will say, how weird is it to see that division that many of us called the NFC least? All of their teams are 500 or better. With that win Monday night, the Washington Commanders were able to move to 5-5, putting them at 500 on the season. And, everybody else in the division is only looking better on their schedules. Coming into this season, I know a lot of folks were looking to, and even me myself, I was not expecting much out of this division. I thought maybe it was a two-horse race between the Eagles and the Cowboys, and that would be it. There would be a drop off, there would be a cliff. You would find the other two teams at the bottom of that cliff. And unfortunately, that doesn't seem to be the case. We have the New York Giants, who they are definitely the Cinderella story of the season, I think. Rookie head coach, a team with, talent in places. Me personally, I would have liked to see them hold on to Kadarius Toney, but that wasn't the case. Yes. See? And along with my point about the Eagles making the playoffs, as my man Jay says, Nah, they struggling against the Texans and Commanders. I don't see them making it. Plus, you trade Robert Quinn, but not using him. What's next? Signing Sue, just to say, hey, just to say they did it. Well, I don't really agree with you there. I mean, this was a team. Me personally, I thought they had one of the best defensive lines coming into the season. They've, I might have not agreed with the moves, with some of the signings and moves they've made, but bringing in talented pieces, I definitely don't see that as something that's going to hurt them, especially when it comes to playoffs and having even more depth that you can rely on. I mean, we saw this team go out and upgrade their their wide receiver position greatly, and then turn around and continue to improve other units on the roster. And I mean, that's what it takes. You're gonna have depth going into the playoffs. You're likely going to have the division locked up, if not potentially going for a first round bye or the number one seed overall. Um, so yeah, I if this team gets into the playoffs with the pieces they have around Jalen Hurts, do I think Jalen Hurts is a top 10 quarterback? I'd put him just outside, maybe in that 12 to 15 range, but he is a talented enough quarterback that if you get into the playoffs with the pieces they have, I definitely think it's a possibility that this team can rattle off 2 or 3 wins and get themselves into the Super Bowl. Now, to move on to, switch things up a little bit, go over to the basketball side of things. One thing I, you know, wanted to touch on, but at the same time, maybe there's a lot going on in Brooklyn. I mean, a lot. Like, we thought things were bad at the beginning of the season for the Boston Celtics when with everything that was going on with their former head coach, and it seemed that after firing Steve Nash in Brooklyn, that's exactly who the Nets were going after. That's You usually don't hear certain reporters make statements about that this will be the next head coach, and that was what took place. And they seem to get a look behind the curtain on whatever is going on with that situation, and it was enough for the Nets to turn and run. And I mean, I'd love to get the full details on this story because everybody that's opened the box has shut it and ran in fear. But also with the Brooklyn Nets, we've seen over the past weeks what has been going on with the Kyrie Irving situation, and it's possible we see him coming back. It's I say possible because there seems to be no real certainty surrounding this situation as far as his return. And it's almost the type of thing that, from a betting aspect, you really have to treat the situation as almost like an injury. You may see him come back. You might, you may not. And that's the only way that you might be able to approach the Nets in the coming games or weeks, because I don't as far as somebody on the outside looking in, we don't know when he'll be back. And honestly, we don't know if it'll turn this Nets team around any. We've seen Kevin Durant in the news lately with his statements, which only seem to further prove the dysfunction that a lot of people have speculated that is taking place within the Nets organization and roster. And from a betting perspective, in a lot of ways, that means you fade this team. It doesn't matter who they're playing, who they're taking on. Um, you know, coming into tonight, they were taking on the Portland Trail Blazers, a team many expect to be at the bottom of the Western Conference, a team that, from a betting aspect, has been a very good team to play against the spread. This team, 11-3 against the spread, the Trailblazers have been. A little live update. Nets and Trailblazers currently 106 to 103 with 24 seconds left, and the Nets have that 3-point lead. I mean, I think that kind of goes to prove my point. This is a team that many would have looked at this matchup and assumed that if you were looking at this matchup a week or two ago or preseason, this is a game where you expect the Nets to come in and blow out their opponent, win by 15, 20 points, put up 120 points. And that's not what's occurring with this team. The Nets, so far this season, have been, for the most part, an under team when it comes to the game totals. Over their past 10 games, they've been 3-7 towards the over. This is a team that is not putting up a lot of points, is not playing defense. The other night we saw this Nets team take on the Sacramento Kings, get blown out by 30 plus points, and give up 153 points. Now, honestly, folks, that's just insane. It's insane. That's insanity. Now, it, you back to my point, does all this make the Nets an automatic fade? I would have to say so. Now, if you was playing this team on the spread tonight, coming into this game with Portland, they were a 7-point underdog. So, yes, it's possible that they walk away without outright win. It's also possible that you cover easily on the spread if the Trailblazers do happen to come back. And it seems things are close to being in the process of finishing. We may have overtime, which, folks, that would please me quite a bit, because a little theory I've been testing out little recently, looking into how often overtime games are taking place in the NBA this season. And for those that spend a good bit of time looking through props, looking through those lines, there are props for overtime. Will there be overtime? This is typically a prop you can find at almost 10 to 1, at least plus 900. Um, yes, exactly. And not only did he see the writing on the wall, he might be the one writing it on the wall, Jay. So, yes, uh, to get back to yes, and that's another good point. As I said, there are quality pieces on their roster, and you know, it will be interesting to see what could occur if players start getting shipped off. I almost wonder if we see something where we see a player like Joe Harris or Seth Curry get moved, possibly even Ben Simmons, because I don't think it's likely that we see Kevin Durant get moved, whether it be midseason or it's gonna take something serious, or a serious offer from a team for Kevin Durant to get moved, and I don't think we see that occurring given KD's history with teams. And a little update on our game. It does seem that the Nets might pull this game out, as of all people. Well, sure enough, if some technical difficulties ain't just proper. For those that know, this was the first live stream for Backyard Action Media, though it was not the first attempt at a live stream. But we won't get into that, you know. But I think this is probably, good point to come in and wrap things up. As I said earlier, this is something that I'm gonna be doing more of, possibly Thursday or Tuesday nights, you know, wrapping up some of the trends and betting angles that exist out there, possibly giving a few plays and trends to look out for. But the point of Backyard Action Media and the content here is to help better people out here that are interested in sports gambling and want to want more info, and not just info, but maybe a different perspective on how to find angles, what might present itself. And sometimes that requires looking back on some of the past games and also keeping an eye on the future. So, yeah, you can definitely look out for more live content coming out of Backyard Action Media with me, your man D Weezy. And most importantly of all, folks, everybody out there, make sure to take care of y'all, because that's all we can do, really. All right, be easy.